and television.
I don't have, you know, this is it. And particularly in a day and age now when managers are coming and going in 5 or 6 or 7 weeks, particularly difficult. I think my record speaks for itself.
Absolutely, it does, no question about that.
Much.
So when you're looking
I've done it. You've had loads of time. You've had more time than the lads here at the end of the day. And I thank you for your time. All right, much appreciated.
No, thank you, Martin, I think was what he was looking for there at the end.
It was obviously on RTE last night. I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
So, there's a bit obviously here at the start where you said hard luck. What did you mean? You know, so you obviously said hard luck again today, right? Yesterday at the interview. But O'Neill's talking about the post-match interview from the Denmark game.
Yeah.
Are we to... when I watched that video first last night, I assumed that he'd said hard luck again yesterday.
No, yeah, that's what I assumed when he said it the first time, but then as the video progresses, it becomes apparent.
Realise that he's actually talking about the interview, and so the verbal attack was in that interview.
Yes, the post-match against Denmark.
So, like, I mean, I'm not... okay, that changes things a little bit.
How? That makes it more ridiculous that Martin O'Neill would have...
Well, because that's his first opportunity to talk to Tony O'Donoghue since then, and he was unhappy with the interview. I mean, maybe he should have phoned him up.
Maybe he should have, or maybe address it at the time. Obviously at the time, if you just suffered a 5 defeat, you're going to be thinking to yourself, maybe if I say something here, I'm just going to be running on emotion. And maybe he wasn't running on emotion. Maybe it is a rational dislike for what Tony O'Donoghue said. I disagree with that view quite strongly. I think saying hard luck to a manager after a 5 defeat isn't necessarily disingenuous.
But
I think that's his point.
But no, I can't remember. There's more than the hard luck. I can't remember the specifics of that interview, but I do remember thinking, that seems to have gone a bit far. This carrying that on from the Denmark thing is the issue here.
Sure.
Like, ultimately, this was an opportunity to say it's a new campaign. Let's go again. But there's obviously going to be simmering dislike.
There was certainly a State of the Nation element to the post-match interview against Denmark, and some people would deem that to be a little bit inappropriate. I think it's more inappropriate to bring that back up in this sort of situation when people are a little bit more calm. Martin O'Neill is very open to questioning. There is a right reason to question him right now over what happened over the last couple of weeks. And it just seems, I don't know, was it kind of a premeditated sort of thing with Tony O'Donoghue that he said, if he's going to ask me about this, well, I'm going to ask you, Tony, about what I felt was an injustice that you did to me after the Denmark game. I disagree with that, but that maybe, we don't know, but maybe that's his rationale.
Yeah. Okay, that's different. I had just assumed that it was about something that had happened off camera yesterday, but now when you watch it again, you realise that that's what the situation was. Look, maybe we're making too much of this. Maybe that's what's going on here.
Oh, we completely are making too much of this. It's a manager of a national team who kind of has a mutual begrudging respect, maybe that's being very kind to the situation with one particular journalist. Obviously, we're blowing this up to something more than it actually is because it's not going to manifest itself in the results.
There's not that much coming out of the stuff with the written media who were all at the draw. Like, there's no real sense of clarity being brought from what exactly happened from O'Neill's perspective. But maybe that's just all over now. This doesn't matter. It's just that he did seem very angry there. Yeah. It didn't seem as
it's Tony. It is definitely a thing with Tony O'Donoghue. It is not to do with... I guess there is a general level of, I suppose, suspicion with the media, maybe. I don't know. Maybe because of the criticism that Tony alluded to yesterday, that there is a general level, as I say, of suspicion with the media in general. But I think there is a heightened level of that when it comes to Tony O'Donoghue, for sure. There is... Like, I use begrudging respect there. I think I'm being quite kind to the situation by saying that.
I wonder if you could do with a little bit of the Eddie Jones school of things where, you know, it's like, oh, everybody's amazing. Look, you know, you guys are all so amazing. You're brilliant.
Well, Eddie Jones has got a very useful technique where if he gets angry with you, he doesn't really change his tone. He doesn't know, he just speeds up a little bit in what he's saying, and he uses the word mate a lot.
Yeah.
So he's like, you said, hard luck to me, mate.
Pal.
Like, if you get that from Eddie Jones.
Pal.
Dave McIntyre Dave had to stare into that last year at the Six Nations launch. It was Oisin Langan there this week. I think he's obviously got more of a, I don't know, do the glasses that Oisin wears kind of shade the look in the eyes that Eddie Jones can give you, or something that he could take him on toe to toe. Dave certainly kind of looked like a man that Eddie Jones could take on, he felt last year.
What happened last year?
Well, we had the slip in the shower.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, do you expect us to believe that, Eddie?
Yeah.
Dave didn't ask, but, you know.
That was certainly what he was insinuating. Yeah, but Eddie Jones has come out, as you said, and has begun the mind game straight away, as if this is kind of like what happened last year as well, that it was Ireland versus England, last game of the Six Nations, flip fixture this year, but also the last game of the Six Nations. And already, at the Six Nations launch, the mind games have started.
Yeah.
Eddie Jones kind of complaining about...
Pretty mediocre mind games, really.
Yeah, a little bit, but...
At this point, but you know it's going to ratchet up. Gatland was happy enough to go, yeah, we're going to win it. Yeah. These two chumps going, no, you're going to win it. No, you're going to win it. Gatland's like, yeah, Wales are going to win it.
Yeah.
They've no out half.
Jones confirmed during this that he was indeed not Donald Trump. He refers to the injuries that he has in the camp, and I don't know what the illusion was. I think it was something about control and ring fencing players. He was like, I can't control anything. I'm not Donald Trump. I can't build a wall around my players. And then you start to think, wait a minute, look at the amount of players that are available to you and are under RFU contracts in comparison to players that are under IRFU contracts. This is a bit rich if you're using Ireland as your standard bearer for players that are available.
Yeah, Schmidt was like, we've got 4 teams, Eddie has 12 to pick from, and probably more if you wanted to go below. If somebody happened to play for a team that wasn't playing Premiership rugby, he'd still be able to pick him. Although then it does make a little less sense that we're not picking players. Anyway, another debate that we're not going to get back into for right now, but we will talk more about the Simon Zebo comments a little bit later on. If you want to get in touch with us, you can get us on Facebook, Twitter or YouTube. Tetchy Managers, Thursday back pages, 2018 in hurling, our top 10 power rankings, who is the number 1 hurler in the country at the moment. Tipperary/Coola's Shane Stapleton is going to be in studio a little bit later on to announce that, so you can expect 6 Tip lads and 4 Coola lads in his top 10. We're going to hear from Donal Burke and Pat Horgan ahead of the throw-in in the Alliance Hurling Leagues this weekend, and we're continuing our coverage of the George Gibney story. Irvin Muchnick is a US investigative journalist who's been covering this story and has been keeping tabs on Gibney's whereabouts, but also the possibility of him perhaps facing criminal charges for a bunch of crimes, either in Ireland or in the United States, the potential for him to get kicked out of the US as well. Mossy O'Crahor says Martin O'Neill completely messed up against the Danes. The second leg was a shambles. From the formation to the tactics, he panicked. You would not have seen the Northern Ireland manager do that. I mean,
that's what we keep telling ourselves.
People keep making mistakes.
Is Michael O'Neill mistake proof?
No, exactly. And like, I mean, there's no alternative reality where we get to test out the theory that somebody else would have managed the situation in a superior manner. He might well have.
Yeah. Are we comparing Michael O'Neill and Martin O'Neill to being similar level managers if Ireland lose 2-1 in that second leg? I mean, Northern Ireland lost by 1 goal. I know Northern Ireland went for it in the second leg and probably should have scored. But if Martin O'Neill, as he alluded to yesterday, if he'd sat back and just allowed it to be a 2-1 defeat, would people have been a lot happier? He
made the point about the James McLean goal. If that had gone in, we probably would have be going to the World Cup this summer. I mean, maybe if we made better substitutions, we might have got back into the game in the second half. It'd be nice to be able to have those conversations. Why did you make the subs that you did, as opposed to...
Yeah, like, to be fair, what if we'd won in Georgia? What if we hadn't lost at home to Serbia? What if we had won away in Serbia, which could have happened? There's so many what-ifs when it comes to these international campaigns, and I'm sure Wales have plenty of what-ifs. Denmark have plenty of what-ifs about not qualifying automatically, so it's all what-aboutery, Ger. All yes. What-aboutery. Let's have a look at the back pages of the newspapers this morning. We're going to start with the Irish Examiner, and they lead with this story on Martin O'Neill. Where to now, reads the headline. Prickly O'Neill defends tenure, but World Cup wounds still raw. On the back of the Herald then, it's the same thing. O'Neill's mind is on revenge. Ireland boss promises new faces and fighting spirit for the nation's battle. So if you haven't figured it out by now, Wales and Denmark, we played them twice each in the Nations League. Everything after that is a load of nonsense, which we tried to figure out yesterday. Well, I know it in my head, but I can't really explain it that well.
You did a reasonable job, but Nathan is your man if you want to...
Yeah.
The Instagram stories are up on the Off the Ball account or up on his
on
own?
the Off the Ball account, okay. Yeah.
Normally he builds his own personal brand first and then like...
But I forced him to do it on our account rather than his one. You know, I said you're not taking those easy numbers. We move on to the Irish Daily Mail. Wanted man reads the headline. That's in relation to Martin O'Neill again. It's no surprise I'm in demand, he insists. You've also got Mohamed El Neni jumping over Granit Xhaka as Arsenal celebrate their 2-1 win over Chelsea last night in the Carabao Cup semi-final second leg. Business as usual, reads the back of the Mirror. O'Neill comes out fighting after link to Stoke City Post. And the other newspaper that leads with Martin O'Neill is The Sun, which I believe is on your side of the table over there, Ger.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll get to The Sun in just a minute, but I'm going to start with the Joe Schmidt story. Schmidt hits back after Jones taunts. he didn't really hit back. It was like the kind of quiet, ha ha, I'm laughing. The bookmakers have said that England are the favourites and the bookies are rich, and so therefore, more than likely, that's what's going to happen. Jones puts heat on Schmidt with his, they're the favourites, we're not the favourites. It's all kind of crappy, low rent, Punch and Judy stuff. O'Neill, Irish players want me to stay. This is the main line coming from the interview with the written media, is that the players will be delighted that he's coming back. GPA sees no future for Tier 2 football. We need to have a chat about that at some point. There is definitely a future for Tier 2 football if it is managed properly. And there's even a way that you could give teams a wildcard entry into a playoff system where you get promotion and you do still get to be a wild card in an end of season championship that leads to Sam Maguire. But maybe if we talked about it first, as opposed to going, no, we might have a chance of getting it through. Arsenal's Heart of Granite, Xhaka sets up City showdown in final as Chelsea crash out. Cricket. One day cricket, in fairness. I love cricket, but one day England at this point with their crappy team, no thanks. The Telegraph, Gunners strike lucky. I mean, they did strike lucky. They
were the better team.
The equalisers was a bit lucky, but like exactly. I mean, they come from 1-0 down in a situation where they never come from a goal down against a good team. Joys in green. O'Neill, players will be delighted I'm staying on.
Is that the pun sound you just made there?
Yeah, like joys in green. And then Arsenal. Unlucky Rudiger helps Gunners on way to Wembley.
Yeah, Rudiger had a pretty bad day at the office last night. He was the second man involved in the pinball header from Nacho Monreal, and he indeed provided the assist for Xhaka's winner last night as well. A terrible day at the office for him.
Arsenal.
I don't know, is there an explanation in the subheadline?
Arsenal are on their way to Wembley with Chelsea left back ruining their bad luck. Blues defender Antonio Rudiger scored a comical own goal before his wicked deflection gifted the Gunners victory. Arch enemies? I don't know. Eddie's upping the ante. That's that story about Eddie Jones. And City aim to deliver. This is the not very good news for those of us who made a certain bet about a certain West Brom defender being at Man City after advice from a certain off-the-ball teammate. Aymeric Laporte is finally ready to join Man City for 57 million quid, the Athletic Bilbao centre-back. And then great picture of Roy Keane and Martin O'Neill in the Irish Times. Keane with his... I don't know what that face that Roy Keane is making, but it's arch. That's what it is. It's like he's definitely, that's the definition of the word arch. And then they've got a picture of Joe Schmidt looking at Rory Best. There's a great picture in most of the other papers of Eddie Jones kind of out of the side of his face looking at Joe Schmidt, but there's no pictures of Joe Schmidt looking at Eddie Jones. So
yeah.
Body language 1, Joe Schmidt, Eddie Jones 0.
I saw that picture. It kind of reminds me of that Tom and Jerry episode where Tom is like peeking around the door with a cap on. I don't know what the circumstances of that were, that Tom was wearing a hat, but certainly that kind of sneaky feeling that he's sneaking up on Jerry, but Jerry knows better, as did Joe Schmidt yesterday, to expect those quotes from Eddie Jones.
There's a bunch of golfers on 7 under par at the Omega Dubai Desert Classic. I'll run you through some names. Thomas Pieters, Alexander Levy, Chris Paisley, Lasse Jensen, and none other than Rory McIlroy. 7 under par through 16 holes of his round today, which is boom, Rory's back. And also doing well this morning in purely coincidental news, Caroline Wozniacki.
She's into the final of the Australian Open. She is going to play Simona Halep. Halep is just after beating Angelique Kerber in an absolute classic. It went to, I think it was
9-7
9-7, I think, in the third set, yeah. So they made it into the final on Saturday morning. Of course, in golf as well today, Tiger's back. It's the Farmers this weekend, and this is the first real kind of top-level tournament since he's returned. The ones at the end of last year, we're not going to really count.
Well, some people are counting them. I don't. I think it's nonsense.
Yeah, so do I. He says he's feeling better than ever, and that's really exciting. If he misses the cut, though, then it's all over. He's not back, and this whole thing is done. But so no pressure, basically, Tiger, is what I'm trying to say.
We'll wait and see exactly how well Tiger does. All right, if you want to get in touch, you can drop us a comment on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube. Now, here's Cork Pat Horgan with Oisin Langan at the National Hurling League launch, talking about the impact that the new championship format will have on players.
I said there, will it go? It's going to be hard, like physically on fellas, because trying to get you're playing a championship game, like, and it's obviously very tough on you, you know, with the heat and the different intensity of the game, and it's so tough that like you're probably not coming around till midweek the following week, and like your last train's probably going to be the Thursday before the Sunday you're playing again. So it's going to be very hard. Like, you know, we've never done it before, so it's probably good to try it, but I'm not sure where it's going to go. Like, it's going to be very hard. Players like, you know, and pick up niggles, won't be able to play the following week and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes, but it's going to be very hard.
Do you think the authorities, GA, Congress, the whole lot, everyone has to be willing to learn and listen to feedback from you guys, such as the things you just said there, that if all that kind of happens, maybe they need to restructure the restructuring?
They probably, like I'd say they will, because no one knows what this is going to bring. Like, so with crowds going to games, no one knows how many are going to be there, and how players are going to come out of it injury-wise, and you know, how they actually feel. Like, you know, midweek, like, it's draining to play in a championship game. You kind of need 3 or 4 days to just, you're in a bad mood, like, if anything, because you're just so drained and you want to get back to feeling.
Even if you win?
Like, it's just draining. Like, you go home with a pain in your head, you know, go home, the first thing you take is you know, whatever, Panadol or whatever, like, just to get rid of the pain in your head. It's tough going, like, you know, being dehydrated during the game and sweating so much in that heat. It's draining, and like it'd be just interesting to see how players and teams cope with that week on week, like, you know.
It's funny, John Giles always used to say that there'd be like a 2 o'clock in the morning headache after big games and you wouldn't be able to sleep just because of the adrenaline. Shane, how are you?
Not too bad.
You know all about those big games and the adrenaline?
I do, sitting on the bench for them.
Hey,
mostly.
I was going to do that for
Got there before you did. It was coming, wasn't it?
That is really interesting, like that kind of sense of these big games take stuff out of players, and because we definitely want to get the balance right between the amount of training to games. That ratio has been horribly skewed in recent years, so trying to fix it, but it's maybe having a week off in between somehow. I don't know what the answer is, but
definitely mentally as well. Players seem to always talk about that, how, you know, you're trying to get yourself up, and especially at the very end of the year when you talk about like guys in an All-Ireland final, and then imagine the high on playing in an All-Ireland final, and then maybe 6 days later you're out in a club game as well, where the whole town is expecting you to lead the charge, and you're like, geez, I'm running on empty here. But a big one for me at the moment is actually the crossover between the league and the pre-season competitions, but also
Sickers of Fitzgibbon.
Like, it's ridiculous, because I've seen a few instances whereby a guy, and the pitches are so heavy at this time of year and unplayable at the weekend, as we saw. The amount of guys that I've seen that play on a Tuesday and then the Wednesday they're out with their county, you know, so college, and then the next day
training
matches.
I've
seen guys play matches 2 games in a row, college, then county, and we're talking about guys who are getting flogged in training as well. A huge amount of county teams are training incredibly hard, and I put up a status on Twitter about it saying it's ridiculous what's happening, how many injuries are we going to see later down the year from this. And one guy in particular who I had seen do it 2 days in a row, he liked the comment, and a few other county guys did as well. So that kind of gives you an indication that, you know, it's touching a nerve.
Is it the matches that are killing them, though, or is it the training on top of the matches? You would suspect that it's around this time of year, it's pretty tough training.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of everything. You see, like the Dublin Hurlers are doing 2 days at times during the week, and I remember I'd done that once or twice, and that would be like I'd do my own thing, and then I'd go to training with the club later that night, and it really takes it out here. I remember one time I was so tired from it that I got kind of sick, and then my hips were at me, and you know, if you're doing that week on week on week, albeit these are much younger guys in most cases, like, that's got to take it out here. Now there are stats out there that you're way, I think the stat is something like you're 16 times more likely to get injured in a match than training, so the toll is obviously greater from that, assuming you are playing all the time. But I think the idea of having all these tournaments, like pre-seasons with college and then the league, all at the one time of the year where the pitches are particularly punishing, is ridiculous.
Let them play fits, like Derek McGrath said the other day. I think that's the best solution. Surely everybody can get behind that this time of year when there's not a whole pile of competitive, huge, high-octane games to play. You can still do your pre-season because let's face it, it's October, November when the group gets together. It's not like this is a pivotal time when it's just the early formation of the squad.
Especially under-21 teams. Like, there are under-21 teams that won't play in championship until July, we'll say. Now, the football teams obviously start a bit earlier, but their county under-21 manager will have them from October and November, and you know, there'll be conflicts there with the likes of college teams as well, and it seems ridiculous. Now, I actually think that the players that are in the best situation during this time of the year are the guys that are still with their clubs, because the club gets first call with them, they're not getting flogged with their county, there may or may not be an agreement to play with your college as well. But you know, they're not being demanded train 5, 6, 7, 8 times a week in some cases.
Colm Callanan was doing water the other day for UCD. Didn't play in the hurling, I think.
Yeah, that was in the football against Maynooth.
Okay,
no, he
did
didn't
play in the hurling? Does he play hurling for UCD?
I don't think so. No. Like, it's funny, you think I'd know that inside and out, but I'd never sat down with Con and talked to him about that kind of thing.
They won yesterday. They won a game in Limerick. I was reading the report in the Examiner.
UCC in Cork.
Beat UCC in Cork.
Yeah, I know doubt they'd want him.
He wasn't listed, so. Yeah, I mean, do they just pick him for the final for both the hurling and the football?
Yeah, I couldn't see that happening. Actually, if we had time to sit down, I have a full list of all the Fitzgibbon Cup panels, so I could look for that for you. I'm pretty sure he's not on it because I did scroll through them all. Yeah. But
he's entitled to be, so that would be those two teams, and obviously all the other teams that are pulling at him at the moment as well.
Do you know who has a good system at the moment? Is John Myler. He talked about it, the new Cork manager. If guys are up in college in, let's say, Limerick, and he's based down in Cork and it's a couple of hours commute, he's happy to let them train with their college teams during the week. What's the point in flogging them? What's the point in bringing them down to do a little bit more? He trusts them. And I think most players, once they're in the inter-county system for a while, they understand this is how I need to eat, this is how I need to train. So I think like a bit of a common sense approach. Common sense is so rare.
I wonder, does he have that approach because he was with the setup for the last couple of years, so it's not somebody coming in starting fresh and saying, right, it's my way or the highway, I'm going to have to lay down my law here, and I know that I'm you know, I can't trust these lads because they don't know what I'm like, and I need to flog them so that I can break them to make sure that I have them.
Well, he had them with under 21 last year as well, and I don't know if you remember that game where Cork beat, was it Waterford, and he was
8,000 people showed up.
Yeah, and he was, you know, they were being mobbed
6 minutes into injury time,
and he was crying his eyes out, and they had that late goal.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Like, so this guy is obviously very familiar with an awful lot of these younger Cork players. And he can already see that these guys will deliver for me. I just got to keep them right. He's
also been talking specifically about having individualised training sessions for the older lads, which was big bugbear with Bugler when he left. And Derek Honan mentioned that he was doing the same training as everybody else, despite the fact that he had well-documented hip problems in Clare as well. So clearly this is an issue that you have to trust the players to be able to not do exactly the same work as everybody else.
Yeah, I ghost wrote that column for Brendan Bugler, so we spoke through that length, and it is a ridiculous thing to expect a guy who, let's say in his scenario, he's trying to build a house or he's got a child on the way, and you can imagine he's got to be there for his partner as well, to expect them to be able to show up for Monday night, we'll do a gym, and I've also got a meeting perhaps before and after it, and then I've got Tuesday night training, and maybe I have to do a bit on my own on Wednesday, then Thursday, then you're going to have a game maybe and training at weekends as well. And it is, as much as anything, it is the fact of all these meetings that really got to him. And that's got to be the story up and down the country. You see how few older inter-county players there are now, or how people talk about it.
How do you fix that though?
By tailoring the approach. And
the meetings, you kind of... Are the meetings necessary?
I don't think all of them. And well, sorry, his point certainly was that not all of them are. That they might sit and collectively review everybody's video analysis and footage and go through all my clips, and
as opposed to just doing the full-back line or the kind of defenders or like the right side of the field, or even some kind of...
And that seems far more reasonable than the whole team or panel. But even in his case, just let me sit at home and review my own clips. I'm big enough and bold enough at this stage to see, okay, you did that wrong, you did that right. You know, they'll obviously build some feedback into your clips. And from, you know, what's the issue with learning that way, especially if you're a more experienced guy, you kind of come off the field and know where you went right and went wrong.
Yeah, like, I mean, even if you look at Horgan's comments there about the adrenaline rush completely drains your brain and you can't sleep. Imagine what your concentration levels are going to be like if you need to sit down in front of a TV. Now, granted, those are done like a couple of days out from games. But like on that, you look at the tailoring approach of older players who don't need as many meetings, and that should be the same when you flip that around and look at the younger players who are playing all these games this time of year, playing with their college, playing with their clubs in some circumstances, and that they don't need to come in and do the hard endurance work this time of year because they're flying fit, because they're playing at the top level with Fitzgibbon Cup.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's definitely always a balance. Like, we can't ignore the reality that players do need to do gym work and get their bodies right that sort of way. You know, you see the guys, they beef up over the winter.
Yeah.
The likes of Ronan Maher, will say, maybe, was it before the start of the 2016 season, all of a sudden he walked out and he's an absolute beast, and he ends up taking over the centre-back slot that had, you know, tipped sometimes over the last 10 years, had question marks over. Conor O'Mahony did very well there at times, actually, to be fair. But so there is an element of, you do have to actually give guys a chance to train, to build up, to get to that size.
Have you ever slagged off anybody from Tipperary ever in your life?
And I never will.
Have you?
No, but like, it would be really unfair if I said that.
I'm
Actually,
joking,
traditionally
yeah.
it was a problem position, but he actually did well, to be fair to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, the slew of rugby players that have come from Tipperary is the obvious answer to that question right there.
Well, I'm waiting for you to roll out Alan Quinlan here and get us in a tete-a-tete.
That's it, exactly.
About rugby versus hurling.
Soon enough. Don't worry, it's coming. The public demand it. Right, so the reason that Shane is here today is because we've developed our power rankings for the top 10 footballers. Mild controversy surrounding that one. The top 10 hurlers, though, I guarantee is going to end up being pretty controversial. Are we doing ours first or are we doing Shane's first? We'll do Shane's first. Yeah, we'll do Shane's first. So this is your top 10.
Yeah.
We did a poll.
Indisputable.
The poll of polls will come in a minute. So in reverse order for our radio listeners, we stream this on the radio. You can get us on offtheball.com. Dahi Burke is at 10. John McGrath is at 9. Joe Canning, 8. Richie Hogan, 7. Davy Burke is at 6. Austin Gleeson, 5. Seamus Callanan, 4. Jamie Barron, 3. TJ Reid, 2. And Tipperary's Paddy Maher, number 1.
I think that's fair enough. What are you going to attack first of all?
How many? Just leave it back up for me, sorry.
You've got a smarmier looking picture of me, by the way.
Oh yeah, smarmy looking. All the pictures. That's your red steel. We call that one. So how many tip lads do you have? 1, 3. Only 3 tip lads.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that's
not
fair.
that
There's
bad.
3 Galway guys as well. Dahi Burke, Davy Burke and Joe Canning as well.
But that's obviously the place to start, isn't it?
Joe
in at
Canning.
number 8, Joe Canning.
Yeah.
Why do you hate Joe Canning so much?
Wow. He's in my top 10. Surely that means I think he's a really good player.
Did you put that in so that we wouldn't give you shit for leaving him out?
No, like, okay, so there's this thing where at times I've said...
You spent the whole year slagging off Joe Canning last year.
Oh, that is unbelievably
on our podcast.
unfair.
And then he was Hurler of the Year.
Wow, that's very reductive of
That's
the
how it
amount of
happens.
time I put into explaining that. There are games where he's been incredible for Galway, and there are games and big games where it hasn't quite worked out for him. And he is the focal point for an awful lot of the conversation after all these big games. Did he do well or did he do not? Like, for example, the 2016 Leinster final, he touched the ball 8 times in the whole game, and 4 of them were in his own half. And he was more or less not a factor in the game. And there have been other, like Tipperary in the semi-final, then he ended up getting injured, but he'd had a really, really quiet first half. And you know, when you point those things out, people think you're attacking Joe Canning. I'm not. And now, so if we look at the All-Ireland semi-final against Tipperary this year, so he ends up Hurler of the Year. He should not have been Hurler of the Year. We all know that Jamie Barron should have been Hurler of the Year. Grode McInerney was named Hurler of the Year by 9 Sunday game analysts. Like, he shouldn't have been nominated, realistically. But, so if you look at it in terms of how did things actually play out, All-Ireland semi-final, the end of the game, Joe Canning made the decisive moves. He got the last 5 points. He got that score at the end to win it.
Okay.
The big smile on his face, brilliant. All-Ireland final.
Hang on.
Hold on,
No, because you're making the point that in the semi against Tip, he gets injured but has been quiet.
That's 2016.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's fair to say that he was relatively quiet for a portion of that game, but came good in the end. So you don't know that, like, you don't have to be brilliant in each 5-minute portion of a game to be the decisive player in a game. There's an ebb and flow, the kinetic energy.
Yeah, but you're
moves.
hypothetical that maybe he could have been.
But
you know.
but writing him off after like 35 bad minutes and then getting injured, like, clearly him going off had this massive psychological impact on the team as well, and they only lost by a point in the end.
I don't think it did actually, because Galway were actually the better team in that game, and when the whistle
didn't have their talisman who pulled it out of the fire for them in that semi-final in the exact same circumstances.
Look, I think he's an excellent player, don't get me wrong. Just there are a lot of big games over the years where maybe he hasn't delivered, and a lot of those would have been against Kilkenny. And just to finish off the point about this year, like, he was the decisive player in the All-Ireland semi-final against Tipperary, and then in the final
proved to be their biggest game of the year.
Yeah, and in the first 15 minutes against Waterford in the final, I think there was 3 big scores that he was central to. So he started the game like a house on fire. Now the rest of the game, Philip Mahoney decisively won that battle. So is it okay to be proportionate about it and say, yeah, I think he's an excellent, brilliant hurler. He's capable of things that other players aren't. And I see him as number 8. You don't automatically have to pick him at number 1. It's like you Gooch has to be the greatest of all time.
I was wondering when Gooch would come up in comparison to Joe Canning.
You're happy enough to ignore the odd time that, you know, maybe he hasn't always delivered on the big day, but he has a huge amount of time. So in the greatest of all time, he might be up there.
Okay,
but
he's
not actually there.
That's the point when it comes to those sort of players, that ultimately, as Ger mentioned, the ebb and flow that everybody experiences is just completely focused in on when it comes to Joe Canning. You listed off the minutiae of about 4 or 5 games there, which you could not do with many other players. Any other player, perhaps. Maybe Austin Gleeson is the one other player you could recall exact moments that he did or didn't do something in big games. That's why Joe Canning is the best hurler around, because you can actually pinpoint exactly how well he's doing, how well he's not doing, and he is like the fulcrum of how Galway perform. And the only other player that I can compare him to right now is Austin Gleeson.
Yeah.
That if Austin Gleeson put in a Joe Canning year like Canning put in last year, Waterford would probably won the All-Ireland.
You're putting Joe Canning number 1 here, are you?
Well, I don't want to reveal my personal top 10, but yes, he was.
Jerry, you putting him number 1?
My personal top 10 we'll reveal in a minute.
Yeah. So are you saying it's outrageous for me to put someone at number 8, which is
I think he's definitely the top 5.
It just felt pointed.
I think he's definitely in the top 5.
It felt pointed.
Pointed at,
if I left him out of the list, it'd be pointed. Like, I do think he's he's a beautiful ball striker. I could watch him hit frees all day in terms of how it looks. A bit like Pa Burke, actually. Just a glorious free taker to watch. But anyway, I think he's absolutely brilliant. But I don't think every single day he's going to deliver for you. And that's not a slight on him. I've put him at number 8 because I think he's brilliant.
I think can we have Shane's top 5 again there, just so we can? So Paddy Maher's number 1, Jamie Barnes, TJ Reid is number 2, Jamie Barnes 3, Seamus Callanan 4, and Austin Gleeson 5. Does Seamus Callanan deserve to be 4 after the form that he's had over the last 2 seasons?
Are you serious? 2016 he was nominated for Hurler of the Year. Like in the past 4 seasons he scored 19, 151. Okay. Nobody comes near that. Way out in front. Nominated for Hurler of the Year 3 years in a row.
I'm confused by putting TJ ahead of Seamus Callanan, actually, because I was weighing that up myself.
Yeah, like the thing is,
Callanan not in and out last year.
Huh?
Callanan not in and out in terms of his effectiveness.
Like there was 1 or 2 games. Like people talked about that Westmeath game when the whole Tipperary team were fairly desperate, and he was taken off in that game. And Tommy Doyle, the full-back for Westmeath, had a very good game in him, but he's still, like, the collective of what he's done, it's ridiculous, because this is a power rankings, which includes, surely, if you were to pick a team tomorrow, this guy scored 19, 151 in the past 4 seasons, which nobody can come near.
Yeah, I'm on your side in this one, in fairness. Yeah. I'm against you on the Joe Canning thing.
You are rolling everything he's done in the 4 seasons into one stat and going, that answers all my questions, whereas Joe Canning gets minute by minute. There was a mistake there, that ball came off his shin there.
Look. That's my point. But Callanan isn't number 1 here. But over the past 4
years, he's like 4 ahead of Joe Canning.
Like, they're the same age. And if you were to say, right, who's done more in the last few seasons, that means I really want them as my full forward. But I would never have Canning as my full forward.
Huh?
You wouldn't?
No, you would have
11 now. It's
the best position. Well, that seems to be the position now, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree with you on Callanan. I completely disagree with you on Canning, but I think we're going to move on to the next point.
Tommy Walsh's. So Tommy Walsh had a very specific set of criteria when we asked him for his top 10. And before I read out what they are, I'm going to explain. So no more than 2 players from one county was one that he did. If I had to pick 10 players that would win an All-Ireland for me next Sunday, this is the team I would pick. It's not based on the last couple of years. It's based on this moment in time. So he invented his own parameters because he's a unique man, and so these are the 10 that he's come up with, and there's a bit of uniqueness in this. Conor Lehan is 10, John McGrath is 9, TJ Reid is 8, Jamie Barron is 7, Owen Murphy, the Kilkenny goalie, is 6, Colm Callanan is 5, Joe Canning is 4, Paddy Maher is 3, Dahi Burke is 2, and Austin Gleeson is 1. David Burke doesn't make his team, but Dahi makes it a 2, and Austin Gleeson is his hurler, best hurler, power ranking, and Colm Callanan number 5. I mean, this is an amazing list with a goalkeeper. No one else thought to
I actually had Owen Murphy in my list for a long, long time, and I thought, do you know what, it's more forgivable to leave him out than anyone else.
But he's not the best hurler, best goalkeeper in the country.
He's the greatest goalkeeper of all time.
Justify that.
He is
justify that.
Because, like, last 2014 All-Ireland, he was the decisive factor. I mean, you can talk about who scored the goals and, you know, JJ Delaney's hook on Seamus Callanan and all this kind of stuff. But if you look back at there was a couple of penalties saved. He's a sweeper keeper, and I know the likes of Anthony Nash and Stephen O'Keefe can do that as well. But just his body of work in the last few years, from a converted outfield player, he just makes save after save after save. His puck outs are good. Like, there's nothing that this guy can't do 8 or 9 out of 10. And I remember last year being down in Ennis for a league game, and I was sitting beside Colm Callanan at the Independent, and the game hadn't quite started, and I said to him, he's the best keeper of all time. And he goes, what are you talking about? And then as the game went on, he went on to make save after save after save. And then later in the year, he continued to have an unbelievable summer, keeping Kilkenny in the championship, basically from the goals. And Colm Callanan goes to me, yeah, he's actually unbelievable.
He's only got one All-Star. This is like hurling's best kept secret.
Yeah, it kind of is. It's one of those things. I don't really understand how people haven't noticed how unbelievable he is. It's funny, like, their goalkeepers weren't considered up there with the very, very best during that crazy Cummins, Donal Logue sort of era where Kilkenny were dominating everything and their keepers possibly weren't tested that much. But now that he's been tested more because Kilkenny aren't quite as strong, we're seeing
to showcase his skills.
But the 2014 All-Ireland, he was unbelievable. Like, one of the saves he made against Bonner as well. Like, Colm Callanan's absolutely brilliant as well. But I actually think Owen Murphy, based on the amount of time he's played at inter-county level, is the best pound for pound.
You hurled with Colm Callanan and he didn't make your top 10, but he makes the top 5 for Tommy Walsh. What's going on here?
He hasn't played at inter-county level, so I thought it was a little bit kind of unfair to put him in because...
You'd be accused of bias.
Yeah, well, I'd possibly be accused of bias, but also we've seen him when maybe a county guy marks him in a club scenario versus we have seen in football, but not in hurling, whereby there's 6 inter-county defenders or 7 around him. So I just thought it's unfair to even make the comparison because we don't actually know.
Do you think Colm Callanan's looking at Tommy Walsh picking me in my top 5 hurlers in the country going?
I would say will be completely unaware that this happens.
I want to play.
He pays zero attention to that kind of stuff.
I want to play a bit of hurling though, but it's Tommy Walsh, not us. It's not the 3 plebs here sitting in the studio right now. It's one of the greatest hurlers of all time.
Yeah,
this guy.
Look, Tommy would all be in our power rankings, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
If he was still playing. Yeah, I don't think Con would pay any attention to this. Like that thing before Christmas where in the media there was a few articles going around where he was called The Answer because I had said that I'd heard that was his nickname growing up. And I actually took up the story the wrong way. Apparently that was what some player for Kilmacud Crokes was called growing up. And I got it all wrong. And I'd say about 3 weeks later...
Lazy journalism, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. About 3 weeks later I said to Con, did you see that? And he goes, oh yeah, someone mentioned something about that the other day. I didn't really... So he's paying zero attention. Like, he won't have a clue that this is...
No, sure, but like eventually...
But now pointedly he might be told because I'm saying that he won't be told.
He won't be told, yeah. I don't know if you're like... How does Pat Gilroy convince him, come on, just give it a season. Just have it a go.
Like, I'm a good hurling man, but I'd play for the Dublin footballers before the hurlers. And look, the razzmatazz and what you can do with the Dublin footballers.
But what if you're the one who brings the razzmatazz to the hurlers? What if you're like you're the Michael Jordan of this team?
Like, can you walk away from that Dublin football team? I mean, I get what you're saying, and he would bring a serious X factor to that team. But it's so hard to walk away from that.
It's pretty hard, yeah. The 5 in a row is the thing.
That Dahi Burke selection that Tommy has at number 2, like, he is a guy you'd go to war with.
Explain this, right? Because I'm not going to lie, we did go, do you think he made a mistake?
I had him up higher as well. I mean, and I'd imagine if Tommy was acting like I was, his list changed wildly throughout the day.
What, okay, so who are we going to next? Okay, so this is the poll of polls. We did everybody in the office, and this is what we ended up with. Not sure anybody in the room necessarily agrees with all of this. So we have Dahi Burke at 9 and David Burke at 6.
Yeah.
I would have assumed David Burke would have been much higher up Tommy's list, but obviously he had his rule of only 2 Galway lads, and he went with Dahi ahead of David. We've got Lee Chin at 10, Dahi Burke at 9, Richie Hogan is at 8, TJ Reid is at 7, David Burke is 6, Callanan is 5, Gleeson is 4, Paddy Maher is 3, Jamie Barron is 2, and Joe Canning, just to piss you off, Shane, is number 1.
Yeah, well, he's going to give you that chewing gum for your eyes, those special moments, like Leinster final 2015, you know, that huge long ball, and he catches it and on the spin and smashes it. Beautiful. Glorious. And more.
Only the greatest hurler in the country can do that.
The most talented sticksman. Definitely the most talented sticksman. But there's Dahi Burke you would go to war with, and Joe Canning has shown this year that you can go to the war with him. But if you were to say 10 out of 10 days, who's the guy you're going to go to war with?
So you just said Joe Canning is the best person at using a hurley. In my calculations, using a hurley is what the sport of hurling is based on. He is the best.
Are you saying it's solely what it's about, or is it about putting your body on the line? Is it about hassle and harrying? Is it about being able to give the right pass at the right time? Like, you can be a beautiful sticksman and not be a brilliant player.
I think we saw Joe finally find a team around him that understood how to utilise him, and also,
I've heard this tired old shtick a few times.
And also that he has reached
He's
a
still
maturity.
rolling this out.
No, I think that he's reached a maturity in his own game that makes him now better than he's ever been, and that's an unbelievably high standard.
There's a good point actually that's just coming into our ear here, because you in particular absolutely detest like lingo, the vernacular of rugby, for example, and you've just described Joe Canning as a sticksman.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a 3-on-1 now. I mean, people are ganging up on me here, but I like these odds, because what you know about hurling, you could write on the back of a stick. No, like, as I said that day,
there's nothing like a hurling snob revealing himself in all his glory, peacocking around the office.
When we talked about the sporting vernacular recently, I did finish up and say to you, I find rugby's shtick tiresome, but I'm used to hurling and GAs, so I'm fine with it, and I'm gonna disseminate it.
What's good for the ghost is good for the gun. Do we have my list?
For what it's worth.
Do you have my list?
No, I don't think it's worth it.
I think that's for the best.
I emailed my list. I had Paddy Maher number 1, to be honest, in my own list.
Yeah, I think it's hard not to have him number 1.
Is there a possibility that Ronan Maher becomes the best Maher in a couple of years? I know the age gap between them is only, 3 years? Because
it's probably closer to 5, maybe 6, yeah.
I don't know, just watching Ronan Maher, there's some wonderful moments he puts up and you're like, geez, the potential he has. But I suppose when you look at what Paddy's done, when you look at the heights he's achieved on a consistent basis, it's probably he's never going to be overtaken by Ronan. But
yeah, like, he was the rightful hurler of the year in 2016, Paddy Maher. I know Austin got it, but whatever way it was divvied up, that there was 2 Tipperary guys to vote for and just one.
Callanan split the vote.
Yeah, I think there was definitely an element to that, which wasn't going to be repeated with the way the All-Star panel selected 2 Waterford guys and Joe Canning as the hurler of the year nominee this year. That wasn't going to be an issue. But Paddy Maher's won 3 All-Stars in a row. I think he's won 5 in total.
David Burke's won 4 All-Stars in total as well.
Yeah,
just looking that up.
He's brilliant. Like, he was man of the match in the All-Ireland final.
Yeah.
Got 4 points from play, I think.
Like, he's
brilliant
definitely
for his club as well.
Didn't make Tommy's top 10, but so you had David Burke ahead of Dahi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tommy didn't. Is there like it's a toss of a coin?
There kind of is an element. Like, there's a toss of a coin between most of these, so it's not like there's a yawning gap between Joe Canning at 8 and Pádraig Maher at 1 here either. I mean, I would rather Pádraig Maher, but anyway, that's the thing. Richie Hogan is the big one here, I think.
So,
because
I was saying earlier, if we were doing this 4 weeks ago, I would have had Michael Fennelly number 1, because I still believed that he could get back to the level in terms of fitness. Even that little cameo that he had last year, you see he transforms the team around him, and then obviously the fitness wasn't there for him to be able to sustain it for 2 games, but I would have said that he was the most dominant hurler in the country for the period of time that he was fully fit, which was rare enough over a 6-7 year period, but he would have been my number 1.
I'd agree with you, definitely. Like, the Limerick game last year, he was sensational, and Limerick fell into that old thing of hitting long ball up the field, and there was Michael Fennelly sweeping it up and then coming out and burst, but really clever on the ball as well.
Yeah.
Like the Richie Hogan, he actually had a couple of games that were beneath his normal standard last year, but I think injury was a big problem. I remember being down in Nolan Park for the qualifier against Limerick, and I think 2 or 3 wides he had, just they were so un-Richie Hogan like. And then you look, like, he was nominated for Hurler of the Year a couple of years in a row before that, and like 2016 I was thinking, is it fair to have him in here? 2017 he was injured, 2016 was he really good? And the Leinster final against Galway, he was a sub because he was injured, came on at half time, scored 5
points.
Play.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Unbelievable.
Won the game. 8
points in the 2 semi-finals against Waterford, 1-1 against Tip in the final as well, on a day when Tip were comfortably better.
Tip were like 20 points better than them, but Richie Hogan kept him in the game in that first half. So I have Richie Hogan at number 3.
He's only 29 as well.
If he it's a back injury, and those back injuries, they don't tend to, you need the conditioning to be able to get over everything and to be able to survive for the summer, and you just hope that is going to be the case.
Do you remember a couple of years ago, before I think it was the 2015 semi-final against Waterford, he'd had a back spasm and he hadn't trained in about 10 days. Yeah. And the Friday before the game, they thought he couldn't even play. He comes out and he wins man of the match.
Yeah, there was another one where he couldn't walk with the blisters.
Yeah.
And was it a change of boots or something at half time, and comes out in the second half and dominates the game as well.
I think that was another semi-final against
There's been
Waterford.
A career of overcoming injuries, and you hope that there's another couple of years left, because I actually had Richie Hogan at 3 and TJ at 4. I'm getting
Snapchats to the band here.
There you go.
Yeah, abuse.
I'd Paul Murphy at 10, sneaking into my top 10, because I just think one of the best, most dominant cornerbacks, proper heir to the tradition of brilliant Kilkenny defenders. Possibly has come off his own very, very high standards for that first 4 years when he won All-Stars every year he played.
I'd say you'd have to say it's kind of symptomatic of the marginal decline of Kilkenny. Like, to be fair, they have gone back in the last year or two, and he's been shunted from position to position. So let's say the league last year he started out centre back, and then he's put full back.
Yeah.
And, you know, the last.
I'd say if he'd played every game cornerback, everybody would have gone, oh, they've got that position nailed down, but they were fighting fires everywhere else.
I'd have a big one to ask you about, you know, Austin Gleeson. He's positioned at 5 here. I can't remember where Tommy has him. Did he have him at number 1?
Number 1, yeah.
Yeah. So I often wonder with Austin Gleeson, if he was playing centre back, which, I mean, just even the wearing of number 6 is a subliminal message that I'm a centre back.
Yeah.
And seen as the heir apparent to Ken McGrath. If he was playing centre back in a very strong team, a very balanced strong team, would he 100% be the number 1 player in the country? Or is he too individualistic? Like, if you look at the Waterford team, the reason that they play 7 backs is because they don't have forwards they can trust. So they end up playing a native back in Michael Brick Walsh as a ball winner at wing forward, and he's been unbelievable there. And he was a brief shout for this as well, for me as well. They're playing the most talented hurler maybe around, Austin Gleeson, who is possibly naturally a back as well in the forwards. And then they've got a scattering of other pacey guys around them, and Pádraig Mahoney, who's brilliant as well. So you got to wonder, if he was in a forward line that had 6 up front and guys who were able to spark off him, would he be an absolutely more outrageous?
I think I'd pick him at 11.
If he was staying at 11 and he had 5 natural brilliant forwards around him,
if he was on that Galway team, for example, I think there's something in that for sure, because you look at Waterford's season last season being their best year under Derek McGrath, and Austin Gleeson possibly his poor season in a senior jersey for Waterford, which I know is a little bit harsh, but it's the unbelievably high bar he's set while being a Waterford senior. But at the same time, we don't know this. We don't know he could be better as a result of that. He could rise to the level of that, whereas in 2016 he was almost bringing the level of Waterford up with him.
Yeah, and then even last year he had that goal against Cork in the semi-final where he soloed and kept soloing.
Yeah, and so that's why you think definitely he's a forward as well. Like, you could play him at centre back and he will have a brilliant career, a 15-year career, a 10-year career at centre back probably at this stage, given the demands. But if you do turn him into a forward, you have the potential for all-time greatness, because it's forwards ultimately who end up winning games.
I don't know, centre backs are fairly storied over the years as well. Ken McGrath, Ronan Curran, these type of guys. But yeah, I mean, if you're a forward,
Christy Ring, that level, like, that's what he should be shooting for, right?
And he's still only, is he 22, maybe turning 23 as well? Yeah. So a lot of players only kind of come on the scene at this age. And
well, he's only getting that level of conditioning into him that over the couple of years. Right, that's pretty much it for our power rankings. A bit of debate around them.
Oh, you didn't mention John McGrath.
And what about Lee Chin?
Lee Chin, yeah, I think he's, like, at times absolutely brilliant, but I just think we need to see a little bit more to get him into top 10. Like John McGrath, he was the missing link for Tip in 2016 because he's a scorer, he's a ball winner, he's a tackler, he's a provider.
Brilliant league though, didn't he?
In
last year. McGrath, I'm trying to recall.
John McGrath, yeah, and he was good throughout the championship. Like, he's got 10 championship goals in 10 games. In 2015 he had, I was looking to see that I have the stat last night. I think he was averaging more or less 5 points from play per game in the league.
Not bad.
Got injured for the championship. Tip ended up losing that All-Ireland semi-final to Galway by a point, with neither McGrath playing.
After a brilliant pass by Joe Canning, was it that one?
What?
Was it a brilliant pass by Joe Canning?
Yeah. The great.
Was it with a stick or with his hand?
Oh, stick.
Stick, because he's a great sticksman.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful striker of the ball. As I said, I'd watch him all day, and I think he's a brilliant player.
All right, this weekend's fixtures in the Allianz National Hurling League, Division 1A, Round 1, Cork and Kilkenny on Saturday night at Páirc Uí Chaoimh at 7 o'clock. That's the first competitive game, I think, at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Dublin and Offaly in Croker at 5. And then on Sunday, it's Clare against Tip in Cusack Park, Waterford against Wexford, and then Galway against Antrim, which is like one of the great missed opportunities. The All-Ireland Hurling champions, Galway against Antrim. I was looking at the spread there, it's 23 points. I think it could be a 50-point win for Galway. Yeah,
you'd have to wonder, like, I know a few of the Galway players have been away in the last week or so. I saw a couple of them were in San Francisco as well. I'd imagine they're being pulled from Billy to Jack. Will you come and open this envelope for us over here? But, you know, Antrim aren't going to put up too much of a challenge to them. And
so you think 23 points is about right?
I'd say it's probably not far off the mark. It just depends on...
I think backing that spread is insane.
No, it could be 8-27 to 1-2.
It could be. It could be 127 to 1-2 as well. Is that 23 points?
Antrim are actually missing a few of their better players as well. I can go through my phone here and find if you like.
No, it's grand. It's grand. It's unfortunate, I think, because the All-Ireland champions, there's obviously loads of people really want to see them the first time, and there should be a bit of razzmatazz about that.
Should there be a double header bringing the Kerry to Dublin to play football and Galway to play Dublin and the Hurling have it at Croke Park?
A rematch is like...
Well, just
have a double anyway,
Dublin,
but it's softly in.
But to start the league, would be a nice way to kick it off.
Yeah.
I wonder, could you just have a replay of the All-Ireland final and just decide that both teams forfeit a home match, and would you do it for Croker and you pay their expenses and everybody's happy, like as a double header? Wouldn't that be a great way to start the league?
I'm with you.
Like in hurling and football.
Yeah.
If it was Dublin Mayo and...
Well, that's Dublin getting a home game.
Yeah, but they're always going to get home games, so like we just accept
Kerry
that.
man do not like... There won't be too many All-Ireland finals coming, will there?
It's a good idea, classic. Like, I do think it should be a bit better than Dublin Kildare and Dublin Offaly. Like, at least, I know, no disrespect to Kildare and no disrespect to Offaly, but as you say, let's start this with a punch. They used to do it with Tyrone with the fireworks. They did it with Kerry 2 years ago. Last year, I can't even remember what Dublin's first league game was. It might have been away even.
Oh yeah, sorry, no Tony Kelly. That was the other one. No, Tony Kelly didn't make anybody's conversation here. It wasn't in anybody's list. He was on Tommy's list. Top three, Tommy says. There you go.
Tommy has him in his top three.
Top three, yeah.
Yeah. I think he's capable of absolutely amazing things, and in the last few years we've probably seen that more with his club Ballier than with the county.
That's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, like I think a lot of people make excuses and say, oh, you have a bad team around you, but like there are guys who've had, John Milan, even when Watford were gone well off the pace around 2011ish, he was still unbelievable in the team. He was still the focal point of attack. Still really, really dangerous, even when he didn't have the same quality of players around him. So I think at times when people say, he didn't have a great team around him, well, like, what did you actually do? Did you kind of still put your head above the parapet and deliver? So I do think Tony Kelly is brilliant, and there's like the league final against Watford in 2016, outrageous performance.
Yeah.
It was like the game against Hurlers Stars last year, unbelievable, St Thomas's. The thing is, Clare in general, and we can talk about the Clare Tip game on Sunday if you want.
Yeah.
But I think Clare in general, bar 2013, what have you actually done for us? I mean, they really, really haven't delivered.
It definitely looks more the exception than the rule, is that they're capable of that level of performance, and so that's why there's a lot of pressure on the management team this year to deliver, and on those players really, that like, Davy's gone now, all of the excuses and all of the stuff and all of the baggage and all of the noise around the team, that's all disappeared. But like, Brendan Bugler's walking away complaining about too many meetings.
Yeah.
Do you know? Like,
I think that's life now at inter-county level anyway. I think everyone is dealing with the tedium of the meetings. And
but
I think
it's up to the management team not to treat them, and so you come from that, we're really successful with underage teams, and then some of your older players are like, well, that might really work for the underage lads, but I am a grown-ass man with kids.
Yeah.
And I don't really need to be lectured here, lads.
Do you know, when you're on a team as well, and this isn't pointed at Brendan, but like when you're on a team and you have all these meetings and you feel central to all the plans, you actually don't mind the meetings. But then when you're on the bench, and take a pop at me there whenever you like, but when you're on the bench, those meetings, and where you're not really kind of involved in the conversation as much, and Brendan mightn't have been playing so much last year compared with other years, it gets a lot more tedious, because you feel like what's happening is happening in spite of you, but not necessarily because of your contributions. Yeah. So it just doesn't. It's a little bit more tedious.
Some of the younger lads might be fine with that because they're just breaking onto the team.
Yeah, and it's all fresh and new. But that Clare team, I mean, they've still got brilliant players. Podge Collins, Tony Kelly, Colm Callanan is unreal. David McInerney, if he can stay fit. But they've lost, like, ever since 2013, they've never really had that full team together. Pat Donlan is now retired. Bugler's obviously gone. Colin Ryan is retired. A lot of those guys are gone, and a lot of other guys have had injuries in the meantime.
So what do you expect from them this year?
Same old, middle of the road. Yeah.
Who's going to win Munster?
See, that's an interesting one, because we just don't know what the toll of injuries playing week after week from league and then championship. Like, Tipperary should probably win it.
Does it matter?
Does it matter who wins Munster?
Yeah.
I do think it's been diluted with. I don't particularly have much time for this setup. I think they should have played off the provinces in a month, and then had a complete open draw.
That would have been amazing.
And people said, "But what do you get for winning the province, surely you should get straight to semi-final. What do you mean? What do you get? You get the cup.
Yeah.
And people say you're the winner.
Tradition.
Yeah.
You celebrate a win.
Yeah, and then go straight, do that, go straight into 2 groups of 6 or 4 or 5 or whatever way you want to decide this is how many. Provinces played in a month. There we are. Everyone gets 5 games each guaranteed into a semi-final if you want to make it.
Hurling was kind of done in like a the football. They've got a lot of stuff there.
Yeah.
Draw it out to groups. Everybody says that was it.
It was an afterthought to some respects. Like when you look at the likes of Colm Barrett coming back in with Tip, we're expecting him to be back in with the panel. Does that really suggest now that everything is okay in Tipperary once again? That all those things that happened last year, or those alleged things that happened last year?
Are you saying there's rumours in Tipperary? We don't do rumours.
There are rumours in Tip. Are there rumours in Tip?
No, there's no rumours at the moment.
This is the first winter there's been no rumours.
A rumour or a winter of content.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Do you expect us to buy that?
But you're like, we know eventually things are going to come apart. I know. Colm Barrett is back, and he played midfield in one of the games recently. I don't know if that was a case of just giving some hurling, or is it a case of we're thinking of midfield, but Tip need to sort that full back line. And Michael Breen, I saw recently, was used in corner forward, possibly an inside forward, a 2-man inside forward line. I'm not sure because I wasn't at the game. He was used in the forward line, having played midfield recently. Like, I would love to see Tip play Michael Breen full back. He was unbelievable there at under 21 level. I'd love to see Colm Barrett cornerback, and then take your pick from the other cornerback as well. Donal Maher's done quite well, because Tip need to sort out that defence, because every game, like James Barry's had a tough year or so. And I saw the 2014 final on telly the other night, and he was unbelievable. He was actually electric at full back, but he hasn't quite looked the same guy in the last year. Now, if he can get back to that, absolutely fine. James Barry's a great option. Thomas Hamill is another guy who's been looked at there as well. But at 6'4", people are going to target you with speed as well. Whereas Michael Breen is a powerful guy. He's very fast and he can hurl. A bit like Brian Cody putting Pádraig Walsh full back last year.
Yeah,
you're like, that's that sorted. And I think for Tipperary, you need to sort full back. I don't think he's going to do it, but that's what I'd like to see done with Tip.
Very interested to see how Kilkenny get on this year. Also very interested to see how the Dubs get on with all their players back, because that was a really strong team and a really strong group. And so if they can progress this year, that should make the Leinster Hurling Championship a little bit more interesting, competitive, obviously, with Wexford hopefully sustaining what they were able to do last year, and hopefully kicking on, because they do actually need to get to a higher level.
Players have walked away from that panel as well, and it's possibly down to the commitments as well. We haven't heard
Wexford.
Yeah, a few of the guys have.
Damien Mallon, you said that 9 Sunday game panelists at Grove McInerney is Hurler of the Year, yet not one person has them in their top 10. You do think
I had McInerney in my top 10.
You do think McInerney and the Coonies and Conor Whelan, all those lads, like they all have the potential to step up into this list at any point in the next couple of years. Anthony O'Connor, who is from Cork, says another illustration of how well Cork did last year to win the Munster Championship with a load of Junior B hurlers. # long grass. # the South will rise again.
I had Horgan in my top 10 as well, so there you go, sticking up for the little man there.
Make Cork great again. Pat Cody says among the best hurlers in the country are Martin Kavanagh and James Doyle of Carlow and Tommy Doyle of Westmeath. Roland Gilson says, he finishes with the # bias, so this is obviously aimed at Shane. Your whole point regarding Canning is based on inconsistency, yet Gleeson is ahead of him. # bias. Michael O'Brien, simply no Tony Kelly. Eamon O'Moildónig, who is a Galway man, has a range of emojis that I haven't seen. It's like is that cry laughing with like there's kind of wings underneath it and it's a bit smaller? Sideways is yeah right, I'm being told by Tommy, who speaks fluent emoji. Joe at number 8. At Jesus Lads, Lee Chin ahead of Tony Kelly, says Gar Toohey. And then about Owen Murphy, Davy Fitz, Brendan Cummins, Donal Logue, the 90s and the noughties was a hotbed for goalkeepers in hurling. Owen Murphy isn't even the best goalkeeper in the last 20 years, let alone ever.
I think I've already made a fair old bust at trying to justify that one.
And sure, Tommy wasn't even here to do it himself. But you did a good job of representing Tommy's. Marin Cilic has won the first game against Edmund in Australia. Edmund had a couple of break points, so he started relatively well, considering this is way above any level that he's ever played tennis at before. But that's probably going to last for about 2 or 3 hours, so you'll have to tune into the radio, or of course you could follow us on Twitter for updates on that a little bit later. Shane, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Young Dublin star Donal Burke was in studio to launch the AIB Future Sparks Festival, which takes place at the RDS on Thursday, the 22nd of March 2018, with 5 stages featuring talks around the future of sport, music, food, entertainment, entrepreneurship and technology. AIB is assembling the best in business to inspire and spark conversation with students, celebrating the opportunities within their futures. For more information, aib.ie/events/future-sparks-festival. He was in with Eoin yesterday. Here he is on whether Pat Gilroy's infamous 6 a.m. sessions are actually underway for the Hurlers.
They're not too bad. Just the hardest part, I think, is just getting up. I wouldn't be a morning person myself now, so the hardest part is just getting up and getting awake, and then once you're awake, then it's not too bad.
Yeah, we've had to adjust ourselves in this TV studio to getting awake early. I can tell you it's no easy feat, but
it's tough.
I guess when you're training at 6 a.m, the natural inclination that people have is to think, oh, that's very tough training. But I'd imagine Pat Gilroy, the way he thinks about things, it's not like just get them up at 6 a.m. and run the hell out of them and they'll be fit come the summer. I'd imagine there's a little bit more scientific thought about it. You're not just getting up at 6 a.m. for endurance. There is method to this idea of getting up at that time.
And it's good. You get a lot done like in a day then if you get up very early. So I don't think it's more just mentally then just getting up and getting work done. It's not like they don't get up and just dog it, like it's just get up and do a session, and then it's more for lads, like it's probably lads prefer who are working just to get trained on before work. And then if you have the evening off, then like it's probably easier for them. Absolutely, especially people with families and stuff like that. It's definitely a win-win in that perspective. In terms of the last couple of weeks, it's actually been a very interesting time since Gilroy took over, because when he came in, everybody's first question was, well, the lads who left the panel last year, are they coming back? And slowly but surely over the last couple of weeks, there's just been a trickle of more lads coming back in. So I guess that's quite a fluid atmosphere inside in the camp, that you've got kind of a new breath of energy almost every week at this point. Yeah, it's great. There's a lot of competition now, because I'd say there's still a good few on the panel. Like, so there's every training session, lads will be trying to put their hand up for a selection, and obviously training is very competitive. Then that's bringing the level of training up. Was there any one thing that Ger Cunningham didn't bring, or that you might pinpoint as something that has definitely improved already this year, that you thought, right, that's a reason why Dublin underachieved last summer? Not really. Like, it's just the numbers back now. Is just that's just brought a bit of more competition into it. It's just probably just more competition for places now, and Cooler obviously playing. They're unbelievable now at the club scene. So there'll be more players come back, and then so the league is a really chance for players to put their hands up for the summer. So we're just looking really at Offaly on this weekend, and hopefully we can get a good result there. This just popped into my head when you mentioned Cooler there. Like, I know it's kind of a bizarre thing to say at this point, but how incredible would it be if you had the likes of Colm Callanan able to play with the Hurlers, or even if you look at the likes of Diarmuid Connolly, and you look at the hurling talent that exists within the county that isn't available because you're obviously a dual county. Like, do you ever think about that? I know you're a similar age to Con, so you probably would have played with him. I played a bit of minor with him, He's unbelievable. He's achieved unbelievable stuff now last year. I suppose every county has that as well. Like, lads, if you prefer one, like if you're picking one sport, you pick that sport. Like, it's fair enough. Like, I suppose if all them lads were in the hurling scene, I probably wouldn't be seeing much time myself. So, I suppose you can't really fester on that. Really, you can't really think about it. Like, they chose their sport, like football. Like, they're brilliant footballers, like, as well. So you can't really dwell too long on it.
Donal Burke of Dublin there in studio speaking with Eoin yesterday. Now, here on the show yesterday, we brought you a lengthy interview with the former Olympic swimmer, Dr. Gary O'Toole, and we talked to him about the former Irish swim coach, George Gibney, and how the Gibney story came to public attention, and ultimately how the Irish justice system really let down the victims of George Gibney. That full interview is worth a look. It's over on youtube.com/offtheball. The thing is, obviously, George Gibney is still at large, despite the fact that he's been accused of some of the most heinous crimes that you can ever really be accused of. This is all despite some brilliant ongoing work by the investigative journalist Irvin Muchnick. Irvin has been following this case for a long period of time, and has really ploughed a bit of a lone furrow on this when it comes to keeping an eye on Gibney and the various ways that Gibney has managed to continue living in the US and without any significant scrutiny, despite the fact that there are probably some opportunities for the US justice system and the Irish justice system to at least see him charged and face trial properly for the crimes that he is alleged to have committed. So we caught up with Irving earlier on this week, and I first put it to him that Gibney is still at large in the US.
That is correct. He's been living in plain sight in Central Florida. He's been living in the United States since 1994.
This is a story that you've been covering for quite a long period of time and in unbelievable detail, to the point where you've actually taken court cases to get freedom of information about how it was that George Gibney was allowed to come to the United States and stay in the United States. So maybe for people who are just catching up with this story, you might take us right back to your own involvement in this story and the very beginning, how you got involved and what you've uncovered.
Right. Well, how I got involved is the story of abuse in swimming, other youth sports programs, is really a global story, not just a story in Ireland, not just a story in the United States. And I've been on the George Gibney beat for 3 years, but I've been on the USA swimming sex abuse story going on 6 years now. Before proceeding, I should say that I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, not just Gary O'Toole, but Irish journalists such as Justine McCarthy and Johnny Watterson. And of course, Irish TD Maureen O'Sullivan has been working for 3 years to support the victims of Gibney and to seek his extradition from the United States. And thanks to the Me Too campaign, which has concentrated the mind of many on sexual assault in all activities, in all walks of life, not just in sport, not just in swimming, we're making some progress.
Okay, so take us back to 3 years ago then. Obviously, this was a story that you were covering from the American perspective. How did Gibney become part of that story?
I saw the story of Gibney from years past, and I was at a point in my coverage of American swimming that I asked the question of how did this notorious accused sex criminal get to the United States? Who sponsored his green card? What were the circumstances? And I filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the federal government, which led to a lawsuit in federal court, which goes by the very tasteful name Muchnick versus Department of Homeland Security. A senior federal judge, distinguished Judge Charles Breyer, who's actually the brother of a U.S. Supreme Court Justice, Stephen Breyer, ruled in my favor late in 2016. The Trump Justice Department appealed that decision early last year, and late last year we settled. And I was given access to some, not all, but some very important papers from George Gibney's immigration records.
Just before we do, why would the Trump administration, Department of Justice, appeal the ruling, the earlier ruling? What's in it for them? I don't understand.
Well, in fairness to Trump, it was Obama justice that had ruled in 2010 that George Gibney could not be removed from the country because he had never been convicted of a crime. So I think that there's bipartisan across the board culpability here. Also, in fairness, we should say that my Freedom of Information Act request did involve the butting of heads of a couple of important principles. There are privacy exemptions under the Freedom of Information Act, and it was my belief, and Judge Breyer agreed with me, that in certain cases, in certain instances, documents could be released, at least in redacted form, because of the level of allegations against Gibney, and because so much of Gibney's Irish past was already publicly known.
We actually have an example of some of the redacted documents, and indeed some of the judgment from the judge as well. So here is the Garda Síochána police certificate of character. It's stamped there the 20th of January 1992. And also the 18th of August 1992, that says Garda Síochána something in security branch.
Yeah, the main line there is that he was not convicted of any crime while residing in Ireland. That much isn't redacted, and that is the key line really from the certificate of character we have up there on screen. But ultimately, there is a lot of other details there that haven't been released.
Yeah, so obviously somebody in Ireland has access to this, and no doubt I'm pretty sure that could probably be made public, although I guess no one wants to further jeopardise any possibility of a prosecution into the future. So that document from the Garda Síochána, the Irish police, allows Gibney to go to the United States and say, look, I'm a person of good character here, let me in.
Right, that document is from 1992, and Gibney evidently came to the U.S. via Scotland on a Donnelly diversity visa that was filed in 1992, even though he didn't move to the U.S. until 1994. In between, in 1993, Gibney was indicted on dozens of counts of illicit carnal knowledge of minors, swimmers that were under his charge. And in 1994, the Irish Supreme Court, in a curious decision, ruled on statute of limitations grounds that the prosecution could not go forward. Now, I want to say at this point that I think there are two elements to the Gibney story. There's obviously the justice for Gibney's many victims who've gone a quarter of a century or more with no closure on these heinous, terrible allegations against Gibney, which were largely validated in the 1998 Murphy inquiry in Ireland. We have that, but I have to say that I am interested as well in the accountability of swimming authorities, not just in Ireland, but in the United States. And as Judge Breyer said in his decision, the prime suspect for the sponsorship of Gibney in a mysterious letter that he submitted with his visa application in 1992, a job offer letter for coaching in the United States, is the American Swimming Coaches Association, which has a lot of Ireland-U.S. symbiosis, which we can get into a little bit.
Yeah, we may as well, because we just put up the Judge Breyer's, a line from Judge Breyer's judgment there talking about the Swim Coaches Association. So Gibney obviously needs a few things to be able to get a visa to get into the States, to escape the furore around the collapsed rape cases here. I mean, the accounts of what he is accused of are absolutely harrowing. And, sterling work was done, as you said, by Justine McCarthy and by Gary O'Toole and by Chalky White in coming forward and explaining what it was that Gibney had done over a sustained period of time to a range of different people, young boys and young girls, and then teenagers. Like there's a pattern of behaviour there that is absolutely shocking. And despite all this, to get into the States, he needs a certificate to say he is of good standing, which somehow the Gardaí here have issued him with. He also needs a job offer. And that's the other part of this that you've just talked about there, the Swim Coaches Association. How did that happen?
Well, we don't know because, unfortunately, third-party names are redacted in the documents released to me. And we have basically one line of a letter saying, we're happy to offer you a coaching job in America. So we need more journalism on that. We need sources in America or at the American Swimming Coaches Association to tell us what happened. John Leonard, the longtime executive director of the American Swimming Coaches Association, does not respond to my queries. He has made a statement that ASCA is not an organization that is involved with children in any way, shape, or form. And think about that for a minute. Think about the American Academy of Pediatrics saying, we don't have anything to do with children. We're just a trade association of doctors who happen to treat children, 99% of our patients. So this is a very disturbing a series of events that we still need to figure out better. On the subject of ASCA, Peter Banks, who last year, in 2016, left after a number of years as the high performance director of Swim Ireland, has gone back and forth between Ireland and America. He was an assistant coach under George Gibney at the Trojans Club out of the New Park Sports Centre in Dublin. He moved to the United States. He coached at least one of Gibney's elite swimmers. He developed an American Olympian, Brooke Bennett, became an American citizen, joined the coaching staff of the U.S. Olympics, then moved back to Ireland, and now is back in the United States, in Florida, in Tampa, coaching in America and not commenting on what he knows about George Gibney, which is very unfortunate. And also in the meantime, ASCA has accelerated its coaching clinics and other programs in Ireland. So again, I think what's going on between ASCA and Swim Ireland is a big piece of this story.
So just explain that to us, will you? At the moment, Swim Ireland have a relationship with the American Swim Coaches Association. And I mean, in and of itself, you would expect different coaching bodies from around the world to help each other and to train coaches. Your concern is that the American Swim Coaches Association is still the same organisation, effectively, that gave George Gibney a job back in the 1990s.
We suspect helped broker the job for George Gibney in the 1990s. And in talking about ASCA, we have to say that it's a little more insidious than just cooperation between organizations of swimming in different countries. ASCA's very business model includes, and they advertise this proudly, includes troubleshooting visa and immigration issues for coaches who cross national borders. And Gibney is not the only example of a bad actor in international swimming who's gone from one country to the other under a cloud of sexual misconduct allegations.
Okay, so that's obviously why you got interested in the story from the American perspective, that there's a track record here in American swimming of finding these very dodgy coaches and bringing them to America to work with American swimmers.
Absolutely. And while George Gibney is, I believe, the most notorious at-large sex criminal in global sport, there are others as well. Alex Pucielli from Brazil to the U.S. and back. Scott Volkers from Australia to the U.S. Rick Curl from the U.S. to Australia, and on and on. It's a terrible, very a little understood story of global predation and lack of accountability and oversight of our youth sports programs.
How concrete is your information on Dustin Perry and ASCA's involvement in that? Because that seems to me to be very comparable to the Gibney situation. And if you wouldn't mind explaining the Perry situation and why that is relevant.
Yes, well, Perry's important only as another example. He's not nearly as prominent a coach as Gibney, who is the head coach of two Irish Olympic swimming teams. But Dustin Perry was a low-life character who has been in, I think, 5 states in 4 different regions of the United States, coaching until he gets exposed and busted and moves on. And in 2002, 2003, Perry was suspended for 18 months by USA Swimming, which is the national sport governing body under the U.S. Olympic Committee. ASCA is not that. ASCA is a coaching association, but it has a close relationship with USA Swimming. But what happens many times is that ASCA, through its services to coaches, subverts the intent of USA Swimming to sideline bad guy coaches. And Dustin Perry was a good example. When he was under suspension in the early 2000s, he simply took a job in Mexico through an ASCA job posting and coached under an ASCA Hall of Fame coach by the name of Simon. His first name is Jack Simon, I believe, who himself has coached in 5 different countries. And then when his suspension was over, he came back to the U.S. and coached here. So this shuttling of bad actor coaches from program to program, state to state, and even country to country, parish to parish, you might say, if you want to use the analogy of the Catholic Church scandals, is very troubling and needs to have further exploration through T.D. O'Sullivan's reaching out to two female American legislators who have been deeply involved in this issue, U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein of California and Congresswoman Jackie Spear of California.
Irvin, is this story over at this point? Like, what can you do now to continue to either get further details on what is redacted in the documents already and or find the whereabouts of George Gibney? And so what is next?
Well, I think two things at least are next. And as far as Gibney, he was last spotted thanks to the work of Evan Daly of One Child International. Evan Daly is an Irish native who has been an anti-abuse activist, and he outed Daly. He outed Gibney in Altamonte Springs, Florida, in Central Florida, just north of Orlando. And as far as we know, that's still where Gibney is living. So I don't think his whereabouts are a mystery. What has to happen, I think, is that as a result of T.D. O'Sullivan's reaching out to Senator Feinstein and Congresswoman Spear, we need to answer the question raised by Judge Breyer, which is, why did George Gibney not get removed from the country in 2010 when, in an apparent panic, he filed for U.S. naturalized citizenship after living here at that point for 16 years? I think he thought that citizenship would inoculate him from any further efforts to get him extradited and tried in Ireland. His application failed. The papers that I acquired under the Freedom of Information Act lawsuit indicate that the application failed precisely because Gibney lied on his application about his Irish criminal past, and somehow the U.S. government ruled that while his application would be denied, there would be no other consequences. So that's a procedural thing that I think the senator and the congresswoman should look into more. The other thing, and we need to talk about this, is that there was an actual crime by Gibney on American soil before he moved here as a resident alien. In 1991, we have rather authoritatively established that Gibney raped and impregnated a 17-year-old swimmer on a training trip to Tampa, Florida, a swimmer he had previously molested in Holland, a swimmer who was impregnated in that act and was drugged and taken by an Irish swimming official to England for a secret abortion. So actually, I think the senator and the congresswoman should help T.D. O'Sullivan coordinate the information that is held by the Irish Garda and share that with the state attorney of Hillsborough County, Florida, who has told us that it is not out of the question that crime is not still prosecutable. And I think it adds to the accumulation of evidence that should lead to Gibney being examined, extradited, and tried for his crimes back in Ireland.
There's no statute of limitations on the 1991 allegations in Tampa?
There's a statute of limitations, but it's complicated. There are special circumstances and possible exceptions. I'm not saying that the state attorney in Florida has promised that Gibney would be prosecuted, but that office has said that it is a possibility, and that's why it's very urgent for Senator Feinstein, Congresswoman Spear, to help T.D. O'Sullivan in her efforts.
And this is the only case brought up against Gibney that might have occurred on US soil. I see there was another allegation about something that might have occurred in Colorado that was investigated as a potential case of sexual assault. What was the end result of that investigation?
Well, I think the importance of the story of Gibney in Colorado is that he evidently came here, whether that was the job offer that was in the 1992 letter or it was an independent employment that he engaged. He was a swimming coach very briefly in Colorado in the mid-1990s when he first arrived here. There was an allegation of sexual misconduct against him. He was then exposed and outed for his past in his community in Colorado, and he was separated from that coaching job. And we believe that he never coached again after that. But he's had an American odyssey since then in Colorado, in Utah, in California, or perhaps other states, and now in Florida. And it's just mystifying that this character has managed to get a green card, renew a green card, apply for citizenship, fail to acquire citizenship, and yet still be residing in the United States while this history of allegations swirls around him.
You said that he hasn't coached, or you don't think he's coached since Colorado. Do we know what he's doing? Does he have any involvement with children or at-risk people today?
Well, in Colorado, he was involved in a very shady eye clinic with a church out of Colorado, where he traveled to Peru. We know that he in Colorado was briefly on the board of directors of an at-risk youth program run by the state of Colorado. He left that. He's worked in the hospitality industry, in hotels and dining establishments. So he has access to people. I mean, there's really no industry that he could be involved in that might be considered safe, but it's possible that the things that he's been doing since he left coaching still put him in particular dangerous access to young people.
Irvin, thanks very much for taking the time to detail all that. It is, I guess it's a life's work at this point, and it's obviously pretty awful things to be talking about, but you're doing great work. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks a lot, and I do think we're getting somewhere, and I hope that the American Congress people respond to T.D. O'Sullivan's call and we can take the next step. Thank you for having me.
Irvin, good stuff. Thanks a million.
This is obviously a story that we're going to follow up in the coming weeks. And as ever, if you have any comments that you'd like to leave, if there's anything you'd like to get involved with, you can get us on Twitter @OffTheBall or Facebook.com/OffTheBall. Martin Cilic is a break-up in the first set against Kyle Edmund, 5-2. Edmund serving to stay in the set. He's been decent so far, but it does look like there's a bit of a gap in the quality between Cilic and Edmund, and in fact Cilic has just got a set point there, so it looks like Cilic is going to win that first set.
Yeah, Kyle Edmund will go crashing out, a man we followed very closely this week. He's certainly our favourite of the two new tennis players we've kind of got behind this week. Well, I will take full credit for getting behind the other nasty individual who we decided that was kind of a good person to get behind because he's got a funny name.
Yeah. I mean, you shouldn't judge a person on their name alone, it turns out.
Yeah, never assume that a person is a good human being is certainly the life lesson I've been taken from this.
Cilic wins that up in set 6-2, by the way. What's tennis's second name? Sandgren.
Yeah.
So he was forced to apologise. He wasn't really forced to apologise. He came out swinging. Have a look at this, right? This is a statement that he read to the press after being annihilated by Chung in the semi-finals. So have a look.
You seek to put people in these little boxes so that you can order the world in your already assumed preconceived ideas. You strip away any individuality for the sake of demonizing by way of the collective. With a handful of follows and some likes on Twitter, my fate has been sealed in your minds. To write an edgy story, to create sensationalist coverage, there are few lengths you wouldn't go to mark me as the man you desperately want me to be. You would rather perpetuate propaganda machines instead of researching information from a host of angles and perspectives, while being willing to learn, change, and grow. You dehumanize with pen and paper and turn neighbor against neighbor. In so doing, you may actually find you're hastening the hell you wish to avoid, the hell we all wish to avoid. It is my firm belief that the highest value must be placed on the virtue of each individual, regardless of gender, race, religion, or sexual orientation. It is my job to continue on this journey with the goal of becoming the best me I can and to embody the love Christ has for me, for I answer to Him and Him alone.
Tennis Sandgren basically accusing the media of reading his tweets and the things that he believes in and jumping to conclusions about the things he believes in, because he believes in the alt-rights. He's a fan of Kellyanne Conway. He generally thought that that ridiculous story about human trafficking that Hillary Clinton was accused of, that Pizzagate story, mistaken Pizzagate with whatever the crappy American terminology was for it, but I don't know. I mean, if he wants to deny who he was, that's on him. But you can't then blame people for reading the stuff that you say and then going, oh, you obviously believe the things you say, Tennis.
It's a sensational enough kind of stuff from Sandgren there that he just sits there with his phone and pauses for a moment, scroll to the next part of the statement.
This is what Jesus told me to say here.
Yeah, Jesus is speaking to me through my smartphone on the table.
Well, good man, Tennis. And we did make our mind up about Tennis pretty quickly on the basis of the things that he said and wrote, because it turns out that things you say and write are important.
Yeah, we based our judgment on him just as quickly on that as we did on basing our kind of naive notion that he was kind of a cool guy because he had a cool name, which obviously was a stupid thing to do. I'm never doing that again, that a guy's got a funny name, therefore he's a sound lad.
Yeah, definitely not a sound lad, our Tennis, but he's come out fighting, and so you get to pay your money and take your choice. The only other thing that we should talk about really on this morning's show is that Joe Schmidt has decided that Simon Zebo is not for him. That there's no way back for Simon Zebo ever, I would say, as long as Joe Schmidt is the Ireland head coach, because he's available to pick him now. Joe Schmidt says it's not to do with the fact that he is heading to France next year. It's because he's not playing well enough.
Yeah, he mentioned the game against Racing in Paris, and he said that he threw a few wayward passes, and that's why he's not in the squad. If I just pick up the Irish Independent here for a moment, Rory O'Connor illustrates an interesting moment from a few years ago, which I wasn't too familiar with, actually, that people often brush this thing as a standard, oh, Joe Schmidt doesn't like Simon Zebo thing, and Rory says Zebo's had some trouble with injuries throughout the New Zealanders' first year in charge, but while that was the main reason given for his consistent omission when Schmidt had just taken over, it flew in the face of Zebo's form. Schmidt finally picked him for the first test of the 2014 summer tour of Argentina. Afterwards, a journalist asked what he had made of Zebo's performance. Schmidt threw him a look that cut him in two, paused and said, yeah, Simon was all right. It was one of the few times since he arrived in these shores that the coach allowed his veneer to slip, and it gave a window into his real thoughts. So it's an interesting one to look back on that, particularly in light of what's happened this week, for Joe Schmidt to criticise Zebo's performances, and that's why he won't be in. My favourite line from all of this, though, is that Schmidt said to the press that he might be able to play his way back in via the Pro 14.
Yeah, not a chance. So that doesn't really make that much sense to me, not having Simon Zebo in the squad and saying that it's to do with form, because it doesn't look like it's to do with form. It looks like here's a player who you don't like.
Yeah, but ultimately I think if he had said yesterday, oh, he's not being included because he's off to Paris, I think most people would have been like, fair enough. I think we're kind of acclimatised to that at the moment. Whether you agree or disagree with it, you would still say fair enough at this point.
Yeah, but maybe that isn't the case. Maybe he's not in because he doesn't want to pick him.
Yeah, well,
and even if he was sticking around, there might be a point
Seems
where he's
that
like,
way.
I'm moving on from Simon Zebo because I see this other thing over here which I'm going to use instead.
Yeah, like there is certainly a debate to be made that Larmour has a higher ceiling than Simon Zebo has reached, but they should both be in the squad.
Okay, that's pretty much all we've got time for you this morning. Thanks very much for being part of the show today. You can leave your comments, and if you'd like us to cover anything on the show, feel free to get in touch as well. Twitter has this new turn on notifications button, which when you go and check out Off the Ball AM on Twitter, you can turn on your notifications, and every time we go live, you'll get a notification that the show is available to watch free, gratis and for nothing. Tonight on Off the Ball, Nathan Murphy is presenting. Anthony Moyles is going to be in studio looking ahead to the start of the Alliance Football League season. Andy Lee is going to talk Michael Conlon training with Adam Booth. That news broke this week that Michael Conlon is going to be training with Adam Booth into the future. And it looks like it's a really good decision. Obviously, Andy trains with Adam Booth as well, so he has good inside working knowledge of what that's going to be like for him. The Keith Andrews Show is live today on all our Off the Ball channels at 12:45 p.m. YouTube.com/Off the Ball, Facebook.com/Off the Ball, and Twitter.com/Off the Ball. Tomorrow morning here on Off the Ball AM, the return of the baryometer, I think, unless we've managed to somehow kill it with kindness.
Not with kindness.
Kevin Kilban's going to talk football. Aisling Desmond is going to talk to us ahead of the start of the Little Ladies Gaelic Football Leagues, and we'll preview all the football leagues for you as well. We're going to play out with some Sinead Goldrick speaking at the launch of the Little National Football Leagues and reflecting on winning the All-Ireland last September.
That disappointment we felt, it was completely different when that final whistle went, and I think there's a huge sign of relief within the team, and so many of us were at the heartbreak of that on many occasions, and just even see the new players that came here, the delight on our faces. I think everyone was just over the moon, and it was a moment we'll never forget.
When you cast your mind back to Croke Park as well, it must have felt great to put in such a big performance on a big day.
Yeah, it was brilliant. There was 46,365 people there. I think it was, the highest attendance game at a global standard. So it was absolutely brilliant. The crowd, and you could hear the atmosphere. It was just something definitely coming out in the park that a moment that you won't forget. Yeah.
You remember the number off by heart in terms of the attendance.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's easy to remember because it was the biggest crowd you ever had at the finals as well.
Yeah, I think just something, as an Irish sportswoman, I think it's something that the Dublin team are really proud to be part of. And for ladies Gaelic football, if any team had achieved that attendance, you would be proud to be kind of part of the LGFA community.
You must be very excited then about a double header coming up at Castlebar between the same two counties as well.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It kind of last year we played Cork and we played Mayo in Croke Park for the first, and that was the only double header last year. And this year there's 8. And I think the main one, I think a lot of people are excited about, is that double header in McHale Park between Mayo ladies and men's team.
It's a big step forward having all these double headers. Some of them are going to be televised by TG Carr as well. These are all a good step forward for ladies football.
It's absolutely brilliant, because I think you get that question asked a lot throughout the years, and one thing that you keep saying is double headers, and throughout the league I think that's something that's possible. So to have 8 games throughout the year, more games televised, it's exactly what you want, because I think every player, if they come out and watch the game, they'll get to know the teams, how they play, the rivalries, how personalities, of each player. So I think it's just really good to get people engaged in our game.